The flamboyant Wang family is finally dead. Ha ha ha. Someone in the crowd yelled, and they gathered around a luxurious mansion with happy expressions on their faces. Great, no one will rob everyone's handsome man again. Then will Miao Lang, who was robbed in my house, come out. My Xiao Lang is too. And my Li Zaiho Ki. What happened? It made him look like a slutty broken sleeve. He just invited those people to be guests at home, okay? Then Miao Lang, Xiao Lang, Li Zaiho Ki, he treated each other with courtesy, he didn't force them to stay, he didn't ground them, and nothing indescribable happened. How could he say this to this group of people? Wang Jin struggled to open his eyes, wishing he could immediately grow 10 mouths to correct their words. However, when he opened his eyes, he found that his eyes were dim, there was no one around, and the noisy voices that were still in his ears just now disappeared, and the surrounding area was very quiet. He moved slightly, and his body immediately felt a piercing pain. He hissed, turned his head and frowned, and looked around. It was a poor mud house, dusty everywhere, and extremely dark. There was a window directly in front of him, and the window was covered with animal skins, so no light could come in. This is where? How could Xia Qi and Xia Hua live in such a house for him? Is the moon silver not enough? Wang Jin struggled to get up, but just when he sat up a little bit, his head suddenly became dizzy, and he fell down again. At the same time, there are many more pictures in his mind. It's like a fragment of another person's memory. His head was so dizzy that Wang Jin simply lay on the bed and slowly digested the flooding memories. His eyes widen as time goes by. He knows where this is. This world is no longer the same as his original world. This is a strange orc world. There are no women here, only men and brothers. A man can turn into a beast, and a brother can bear children for a man. And Wang Jin's current identity is a brother. God! Wang Jin stayed for a full quarter of an hour before digesting this fact. He remembered that he was already dead. In another world, his body is too delicate. He is obviously not sick, but he is too hot to be cold. He has to supplement it with ginseng every day. If he exercises too much, he may die. This time, he was dissatisfied with his weak body, ran around the backyard of his house, and then he became the brother of this world. This brother has the same name and appearance as him, but he is a lunatic, and a disgusting lunatic. In this world, unknown beasts are rampant, and people live in tribes. A tribe is equivalent to a small country. The tribe where Yuan Shen is staying is called Danmu tribe. This tribe is not Yuan Shen's original tribe, but Yuan Shen's first tribe. Two tribes. There is very little communication between tribes, and they do not interfere with each other. At the same time, people in each tribe are very xenophobic, so the original body is not likable in this tribe. It is just because there are very few brothers in this world. It was barely accepted. Yuan Shen's brain seems to be hurt, and his memory is not complete. He doesn't remember the things about his first tribe, and he doesn't remember how he went crazy. According to Wang Jin's memory, the original body went crazy from the very beginning. Because of his madness and abnormal behavior, he was often bullied in this tribe. When he entered the tribe, he was also robbed of the salutes he brought with him. The corners of Wang Jin's mouth twitched. In another world, he was a well-to-do rich man. The gold and silver at home could not be spent by him in several lifetimes, but in this world he turned out to be a despised homeless man who didn't have enough to eat or wear warm clothes. The gap is too big, and Wang Jin doesn't want to accept this fact. Brother Hung, do you really want to live with that lunatic? A somewhat naughty male voice came from the door. Hearing the madman, Wang Jin pricked up his ears. The leader rewarded it, very good. Another deep voice sounded, and the door creaked and was pushed open, but Wang Jin didn't see anyone. He took a closer look, only to find that he was in the inner room, and there was another room outside, and the two of them were outside. In the room. Others don't care, but you are the #1 warrior in our tribe, how can you live with a lunatic? You were wandering here from other tribes. The leader made it clear that he ran against you. You can't talk nonsense, brother you should go back quickly, it's not appropriate for us to be alone. What's inappropriate? Just because you have a brother now. The bitch's voice suddenly became very sharp. Wang Jin rubbed his ears uncomfortably, several images flashed through his mind, and he froze again. Yesterday, the Danmu tribe held a hunting competition, and the leader gave the tribe's #1 beauty as a reward. Whoever gets the first place in the hunting competition will be rewarded with the most beautiful brother. In this world, there is a shortage of brothers. It is very good for a man to have a normal brother, let alone the most beautiful brother in the tribe. At that time, everyone was vying for the #1 spot, and everyone agreed that the #1 beauty in the tribe was Brother Yu from Zhang Yi's family. It's just that he didn't expect that when the man named Yuan Heng won the first place, the reward changed from Brother Yu to lunatic Wang Jin. While everyone was stunned, they also understood what the leader meant. The leader had pursued Brother Yu for a long time. In fact, from the beginning, he was rushing to get the first place so that he could marry Brother Yu. Who knew that he met Yuan Heng? Warrior. The leader was not strong enough, but he didn't want to give his favorite brother to Yuan Heng, so he played a little tricky and replaced the first beautiful brother with Wang Jin. Although this Wang Jin is a lunatic, his appearance is good. If he cleans it well, he will be more amazing than Brother Yu. It is not wrong to say that he is the most beautiful brother in the tribe. Immediately, the leader asked someone to pack Wang Jin and send it to Yuan Heng's house. Wang Jin held on to the wall tremblingly, always feeling that this freshman situation was challenging his acceptance limit again and again. Even if I don't have a brother, it's not appropriate for you to be alone with me. Yuan Heng said. Why is it inappropriate? Didn't you fight for the first place so desperately yesterday because you wanted to marry me? Is not. Looking at the brother in front of him, Yuan Heng was a little bit embarrassed. He actually didn't put much effort into the competition yesterday, and somehow he won. Brother you should go back, no matter what happened yesterday, anyway, from today onwards, I will have a brother, and you will marry someone. After being silent for a while, Yuan Heng went out first and led Brother Yu out. Brother Yu was unyielding, I just want to marry you. Yuan Heng was speechless for a moment. Brother Yu gritted his teeth and said, once a beastman marries a person, it's a lifetime affair. You, that lunatic, who beats everyone when he's crazy. He's not a person who lives a life at all. He's not worthy. Brother Yu. Yuan Heng's voice became louder, shaking even Wang Jin who was in the room. There was silence outside for a while, and then there was a sobbing sound. You don't like me at all. Then, Wang Jin heard the sound of running, that Brother Yu seemed to have run away. Not long after, the man entered the house, and opened the door of the back room. The author has something to say, please support the new article, please collect while no one was around, I secretly changed other articles. I don't know if the villain's article will be followed by readers. If so, I'm sorry, because I don't have any inspiration to write. When you open it again, the stem will definitely open, but not now. Now I really want to write farming articles, so I changed this article, I hope you don't mind ___. If you mind, I'll blame you, throw me on my body bow again. As soon as Wang Jin raised his eyes, he saw the tall man. The original body had no contact with the man before, and he had never looked at the man carefully. Now Wang Jin saw that the man was tall and handsome, with very three-dimensional facial features. With an air of calmness and prestige all over his body, just like a general. It's just that on the left side of the man's face, there was a long scar that stretched all the way to his chin, making the originally handsome appearance look a little scary. The man approached, and Wang Jin stared at him warily. Are you awake? Are you hungry? The man seemed to sense Wang Jin's vigilance, and stopped 3 steps away from him. Wang Jin rubbed his stomach and nodded stiffly. He is indeed hungry. One must know that the original body was inexplicably captured by a group of people yesterday, and has been locked in this room since then, without eating anything or seeing anyone, which means that this body has been hungry for a whole day. Seeing this, the man didn't say anything, turned around and went out. Not long after, he came in with a bowl of unknown food and handed it to Wang Jin. Wang Jin hesitated for a while, then took it. No matter what, the meal still has to be eaten. Feed yourself first, so you have the energy to think about the next thing. After taking a mouthful of porridge-like paste, the rough taste made Wang Jin vomit on the spot. He, Wang Jin, swears that he has never eaten such an unpalatable food in this life and his previous life combined. Pig food here. What about abusing him? Mr. Wang Jin suddenly lost his temper. As soon as he raised his head, he glared at the man and threw the bowl in his hand viciously. The bowl rolled on the ground for a round, and it wasn't broken, but the mush inside did spread all over the room. The man frowned slightly and looked at Wang Jin. The brother in front of him was so angry that his cheeks were swollen, his wet eyes were staring angrily, he looked like some kind of small animal. The man was stunned for a moment, and he didn't know what mental activity he had done. After a while, his brows were finally relaxed, and then he silently cleaned up the ground, picked up the bowl and went out. After that, he never came in again. Wang Jin stared at the door as if he was about to see 2 holes, so the man just left? Put him here? Why don't you give him something to eat? After a long time, Wang Jin clutched his stomach aching from hunger, feeling a little regretful. How should I put it, the tiger is in peace now. He is no longer a son-in-law, but a lunatic who has nothing and lives in someone else's house. Taking a deep breath, Wang Jin struggled to get up from the bed, his body didn't know what was going on, it hurt like being run over by a carriage. Enduring the pain, he got out of bed and groped on the ground for a while, but couldn't find his shoes, so he went out barefoot. The outside room is a lobby. There is only a table and a few chairs in the room. The light in this room is very poor, and even the lobby is dark. He leaned on the wall and walked out. The glare of the light made his eyes feel uncomfortable for a while, he squinted his eyes, and after adapting for a while, he looked up at the sunlight. The sun was very strong, and the skin on his face was sore from the sun. He lowered his head and looked at himself. On such a hot day, the original body was still wearing animal clothes, but it was sleeveless. The hands and legs were exposed, and under the sun, the exposed skin was covered with bruises. No wonder it hurts so much. The original body had not been particularly viciously beaten, how could there be so many scars? Wang Jin thought about it carefully, and then remembered some facts. This body was the same as his previous life's body, it was weak and delicate. The scars on his body were bumped into on the road when he was dragged here yesterday. Wang Jin was so aggrieved that he forgot to breathe, his cheeks turned purple. Changing from a wealthy young man to a penniless lunatic was enough to give him a headache, but now his body is still such a squeamish bag. It's like God is going to kill him. Wang Jin sat down on the ground angrily, his complexion turned red and white, and became very ugly. He moved his hips slightly. The weird touch from his skin touching the soil made him bounce up instantly. The original body didn't even wear obscene pants. He said how when walking, there is frequent wind below. Wang Jin's eyes twitched and he tightened the hem of the animal skin. Just at this moment, a man walked over from outside. Seeing the people in the courtyard, his footsteps became a little weaker, and he was still holding something like a pumpkin in his hand. Under the sun, the scars on the man's face were even more terrifying, almost covering up his original handsomeness. Fortunately, his tall and slender figure and that attractive and strong aura added a lot to him. The world must be an ugly monster where everyone shouts ugly. Wang Jin looked at the man, who had already stood beside him. He handed the things in his hands to Wang Jindao, eat. Wang Jin looked down at the pumpkin-like fruit in the man's hand, and then looked up at the man with doubts written all over his face. The man sighed softly, and pulled Wang Jin to sit on a stool by the door. His hands transformed into sharp claws, and he quickly cut open the melon. Instant milky aroma. Wang Jin's disgusted and vigilant eyes lit up instantly, and he stared covetously at the melon in the man's hand. The melon looked like a pumpkin on the outside, but inside the yellow-green peel was white pulp. The pulp was gelatinous, exuding a milky aroma, and looked like cheese. This cheese is a good thing, and it is only available outside the customs. If you want to eat it, you have to wait for the merchants outside the customs to bring it into the city, and you have to rush to buy it. Wang Jin liked to eat this thing the most in his previous life, and he wondered if the flesh tasted that way. He is ready to move. The brother in front of him, his eyes were astonishingly bright, and the salivation made his mouth overflow with some transparent liquid. He raised his hands, trying to take the white jade fruit several times, but suffering from the lack of tools and not knowing how to eat, he seemed at a loss. The man chuckled, stuffed the fruit into his arms, took out a wooden spoon from the room, and handed it to him. Wang Jin got the spoon. Finally he didn't need to be guided by anyone, and directly took a spoonful of the white flesh. The pulp is like a jelly-like object. When you dig it down with a spoon, except for the one that went into the spoon, the one below it bounces up slightly, which is very comfortable to watch. Wang Jin hurriedly put it in his mouth. The taste is sweet, and the milk taste is not as strong as the cheese Wang Jin ate before, but there is an unknown fragrance, and the taste is very refreshing. It is a food that will not get greasy no matter how you eat it. Wang Jin narrowed his eyes in satisfaction, and the man next to him couldn't help laughing at his satisfied look. Wang Jin was so hungry that he didn't bother to talk to the man, so he ate the fruit on his own. It didn't take long for him to eat up the fruit as big as a pumpkin. He burped generously, and slumped on the chair comfortably with his stomach stretched out and his legs stretched out. The man had been sitting next to Wang Jin, watching, his eyes turned to his straight legs and bare feet. The bruises on the white skin were shocking, and the white and tender feet were covered with grass clippings and mud. He frowned, took out a pair of shoes and a bottle of unknown things from the room, and squatted in front of Wang Jin. Suddenly there was a shadow in front of him. Wang Jin looked at the man gently held his feet, and put the shoes on him silently. The thoughtful service made Wang Jin feel dazed for a moment, as if he was still the rich young man surrounded by a group of maids, dressing him and feeding him. Wang Jin recalled that the maidservants in his previous life had been selected for their appearance, and even the guests he invited into the mansion were all handsome men. And this man? Wang Jin lowered his eyes, and stretched out his hand to caress the scar on the man's face. Only this scar can accurately remind him at this moment that he is no longer that rich man. Wang Jin curled his lips, suddenly felt that the scar was a bit of an eyesore, and he didn't even let him recall it properly. Wang Jin stroked the scar back and forth, his soft fingers fell on his face like thin raindrops in spring, which was extremely comfortable. "Are your hands so soft?" The man froze in place as if he was facing an enemy, not daring to move. Unconsciously, Wang Jin touched the rough and hard scar, looked at the man's handsome face, and a thought came to his mind. If he can be cured, this man must be more handsome than all the guests he invited before. He remembered that he was always injured because of frequent bumps, and there was a pharmacist in the mansion who often dispensed medicines for him. There is a kind of medicine called Bishan ointment, which the pharmacist specially dispensed for him to clear up his scars, and he almost always carries it with him. Wang Jin's eyes lit up, as if thinking of something. He said happily, "This scar can be cured, I have Bishan ointment." The man was taken aback for a moment, never expecting that the first sentence this lunatic said when he came to his home was this sentence. Wang Jin slightly pushed the man away, his hands were tied, his left hand was staggered away from his right hand, and he went to search for something under the right hand, but found nothing. He looked down and saw that his arms were empty, no longer the long sleeves of the brocade robe. Without long sleeves, there will never be Bai Sheng ointment in the pocket of long sleeves. He thought he remembered, but he still forgot. He is no longer that rich young master, he has nothing. Puff. The face of the brother in front of him changed again. After making strange movements, he froze in place, and his expression changed from happy to shocked. Because of this surprise, the delicate mouth opened slightly, revealing a little bit of white porcelain inside, and the appearance was so cute. The man couldn't hold back, and after laughing out loud, he reached out and rubbed his head. This person has acted quite normally since he woke up, but he is a bit picky eater. He thought it was someone else who made a mistake. He is not crazy at all. Now it seems. The man glanced at Wang Jin, then shook his head slightly. He is indeed a lunatic. Wang Jin's eyes twitched. Lao Shi's madman. Crazy but kind-hearted. The man pressed the scar on his face with his thumb. The wound has been gone for a long time, and the pain has long since disappeared. Who cares about a wound that doesn't hurt and will not be life-threatening? Can it be cured? Except for this lunatic. The man's brows softened a little. Maybe it's not bad to live with such a lunatic for the rest of his life. It will hurt a little, bear with it. Hearing the man's voice suddenly, Wang Jin looked over, only to find that the man raised one of his legs, and an unknown brown liquid was poured on his hand. After speaking to him, he covered the liquid on his bruised bruises. Then, knead vigorously. Wang Jin let out a painful ah, gasped for breath, and struggled on the chair. What are you doing? The man's subordinates kept moving, and softly comforted him. You don't need to use any force, your blood stasis won't go away. Don't hurt if you can't melt it. Let go. Let go. Wang Jin kicked the man with his feet. Unexpectedly, the man's whole body was hard, let alone kicked. Even if he was hit, it was his legs that hurt. The man saw that he had more bruises due to the restless movement, so he frowned and pinched his flailing legs under his arms, grabbed his flailing hands with one hand, and trapped his body between himself and the wall between. It hurts, it hurts, it hurts. Wang Jin's tears were about to burst out. The brother's cheeks were slightly red, his hair was messily stuck to his face because of struggling, and the corners of his eyes were also bright red with transparent teardrops. The tearful appearance made people's hearts soften, and the man's heart throbbed inexplicably. He continued with the movements in his hands, but his tone was unprecedentedly gentle and comforting. It doesn't hurt, it doesn't hurt. Don't hurt you fairy board. How to coax a 3-year-old child? Wang Jin stared at the man with gritted teeth. The man ignored it and continued with his actions. Wang Jin's eyes turned black from the pain, and he uttered all begging words, begging the man to stop. But the man seemed to be unable to hear, and his hands kept coming. In the past, when he was injured, several people took care of him, and he was treated with painkillers. How had he ever been treated so brutally? The more he thought about it, the more wronged he became, and Wang Jin cried wow. Crying earth-shatteringly, like a child. The man was taken aback, let go of Wang Jin, a little at a loss. You bully me. Wang Jin pointed at the man and wiped away his tears, but the tears grew more and more. The man smiled wryly, I'm healing your wound. You are bullying me. The man felt that his temper had really improved, so he wasn't angry. But the brother in front of him was crying out of breath, his face was flushed, and his face was stained with tears. He just touched the dust of the wall with his hands, and when he wiped his tears, he wiped his face, looking dirty. No matter how you look at it, it's pitiful. Looking at it like this, the man feels that he can't be angry. He squatted down again, wiped his hands on himself, then gently wiped the ashes on his face, and coaxed patiently, okay, it's my fault, can I apologize? Don't cry. It really should coax a 3-year-old child. Wang Jin was dissatisfied in his heart, but he also knew what was the difference between himself and a 3-year-old child now. But he just couldn't help it. Sobbing and holding back the howling of the wolf, Wang Jin's trembling appearance made people feel pitiful. The man hesitated slightly, and reached out to wrap his arms around his shoulders, and the man lay in his arms, and the man stiffened and patted and coaxed. Gradually, the weeping of the person in his arms stopped, and the man looked down, and found that the person fell asleep at some point. The man gave a wry smile, resigned himself to his fate and stood up holding Wang Jin. In a daze, Wang Jin felt that he was in a cloud of white mist. He took 2 steps forward, and the white mist cleared. An old man with white beard and white hair was sitting in front of a desk with his eyes closed. There is boiling water next to it, tea on it, and an incense burner that is slowly smoking. The old man seemed to be aware of Wang Jin's approach. He opened his eyes and waved to Wang Jin. Wang Jin walked over quickly and sat opposite the old man. The old man looked at Wang Jin kindly, and with a wave of his hand, the teapot automatically poured a cup of tea for Wang Jin. Come, try it, this is fairy tea. Immortal tea. Wang Jin picked up the teacup, looked around, and joked, don't you still say this is a fairyland? Yet. Wang Jin was joking, but the old man nodded in a serious manner, the young master of the Wang family is really smart. Wang Jin sprayed out the tea as soon as he took a sip, spraying it all over the table. The old man looked at the tea ceremony distressedly, this tea is a spiritual thing, you are so reckless. Although he said this, the old man waved his hand again and poured Wang Jin a cup of tea again, this time, don't spray it. Wang Jin didn't know what was going on, the old man's words seemed to have the function of confusing people, making him pick up the teacup and drink tea again in an ignorant manner. After drinking, he felt comfortable and relaxed all over his body. Yes, he took a deep breath and let it out slowly, feeling refreshed. The old man squinted and stroked the beard under his mouth with a look of relief. Finally, the karma has been calculated. As he spoke, the old man waved his hand, and many translucent spell-like things appeared in front of Wang Jin. The old man said, come on, choose. Wang Jin looked puzzled, what to choose? The old man looked helpless, naturally choose what you think in your heart. Seeing that Wang Jin still didn't understand, the old man said, isn't it uncomfortable to go to another world? It's useless to eat, drink, wear, and have no one to take care of you, right? Wang Jin nodded fiercely, the old man smiled and said, so, choose, this means eating, with it, you have endless food, this means wearing, with it, you have endless clothes, this means, with it you have every practical tool, and this represents. It took a quarter of an hour to explain these things, and the old man let out a long breath and said, choose. Wang Jin blinked, the feeling of ignorance dissipated a lot, he looked at the old man slyly and said, only children can choose, I want them all. The old man's squinted eyes opened suddenly, and his face was stained with anger, insatiable greed. Wang Jin frowned and said dissatisfiedly, you only said you wanted me to choose, but you didn't say you only wanted to choose one. I have to choose all of them without any problems. The old man was choked speechless, his face became very ugly, he stood up, turned around and left, turned back after a while, looked at Wang Jin and muttered in a low voice, no, just go back like this, it's not good to ask those who are looking for death and life, it's not easy to spit back the Wang family's money, and Xingjun Palace still needs money to repair it. Hey? What did you say? Wang Jin also stood up. The old man looked at Wang Jin's ignorant expression, and it was really uncomfortable to hold his breath. He reached out and pinched Wang Jin's nose, and said angrily, I said, how can you and your group of guest ministers raised in the mansion be so capable? If it wasn't for Qian's sake, I... Seemingly realizing that he said something that shouldn't be said, the old man quickly stopped talking, but Wang Jin was very sharp, money? You came here because you received money. The old man's face froze, he withdrew his hands and said, I'm not that vulgar. Of course I came here to settle the turmoil in the underworld. The 27 guest officials in your mansion are all looking for death and life for you, do you know that? Wang Jin shook his head innocently. He is dead, how do you know? However, those people have eaten and drank him for several years, but he never expected to be so loyal. Wang Jin stroked his chin proudly, those people still have a conscience. The corner of the old man's mouth twitched, those people are disturbing the peace of the underworld now, these are evil deeds, you have to blame them. Hey? Why? Wang Jin objected. The old man said, because they are for you. Wang Jin's face twitched. Seeing this, the old man cunningly comforted him and said, of course, because your royal family has accumulated virtues for generations, and donated all the money to the heavens in this life, naturally these lost virtues are nothing. That's why you were resurrected on a foreigner, you have to know how to be grateful. Shut up. Is it worth being grateful for living on a lunatic? Is it worth being grateful for having nothing? Wang Jin's values were hit. The old man coughed lightly with guilt, this is a little bit unexpected. A fairy friend crossed the tribulation, tore apart the space, and disturbed the timeline. I don't understand what you said, but I know I'm very sad now. Wang Jin said aggrieved when he thought about his previous experience. The old man said, so, this is not to give you abilities, every ability here can make you happy for the rest of your life, you choose one and you. Wang Jin didn't listen to the old man's painstaking persuasion. He finally figured out what was going on with the old man from his confusion. This man is here to pay off the debt. Because I took my own money. Wang Jin became more confident, there is no need to say, it is only natural for you to owe money and repay the debt, and I will take it all. The old man didn't finish his sentence, his face was flushed, he said in a deep voice, you can think clearly, blessings are limited, greedy, the ending is not necessarily good. Wang Jin waved his hand, I think very clearly. The old man was silent for a while, and asked, no regrets? No regrets? Wang Jin said firmly. Okay. The old man sneered, as expected of a merchant, he wouldn't take any losses, but it's a pity. Wang Jin couldn't really hear what he said next, he just felt that many things flew towards him and then disappeared into his body. After that, his head became very dizzy, his eyes were grey and he couldn't see clearly. The old man's voice came from afar, if you want everything, you can't get it with the merits of the Wang family. I will give you a part of all the abilities. From then on, you have all the food, medicine, and tools you have ever known. There are other recipes, but you need to find the materials yourself to make it yourself. After the words fell, Wang Jin woke up leisurely. Lying on the bed where he first woke up, he was stunned and sat up. This is still that poor place. Was that just a dream? What a strange dream. Wang Jin frowned and got out of bed, the pain on his body eased a lot, but the bruises were still there. He walked out, and the man was sitting at the door, with a pile of weeds in front of him. When Wang Jin saw him, he retreated vigilantly. Seeing his appearance, the man smiled and shook his head, little lunatic, am I so scary? After finishing speaking, the man seemed to be afraid of making him cry, so he turned his eyes away. I'm not a lunatic. Wang Jin frowned dissatisfiedly, my surname is Wang, and the single word Jin. The man paused for a while, then twitched the corners of his mouth, it seems that the little lunatic is awake now. Wang Jin rolled his eyes, this person didn't believe him at all. The man said, my name is Yuan Heng. After a pause, the man said again, it's your man. Wang Jin frowned, forcibly held back the retort, and looked at the man's choice in silence. It was a bunch of weeds, nothing unusual. Wang Jin looked at it for a while, lost interest, and was about to turn his eyes away, but caught sight of something. That thing was a weed with small purple flowers growing on the top. Wang Jin was sure that he had never seen such a weed, but when he saw it for the first time, a thought flashed through his mind. This is one of the herbs in Bishan ointment. When Wang Jin came to his senses, he had already tightly held the grass in his hand. Yuan Heng looked at Wang Jin strangely. Wang Jin said, I want this. Boil the grass and mash it into mud, add a few herbs to stop bleeding and remove stasis, and you will get Bishan ointment. This idea suddenly appeared in his mind, and Wang Jin himself was a little confused. He knew very well that he was not good at medicine, so how could he know the prescription of this Bishan ointment? Even so convinced that this humble grass is a medicinal material. Wang Jin suddenly remembered the strange dream he had just now. In the dream, the old man said that he would know the recipes of all the food, medicine, tools, etc. that he knew in the future. Now he inexplicably knows the formula of Bishan ointment, and even recognizes the medicinal materials in the formula. Could this really be the ability bestowed on him by the old man? Wang Jin was puzzled for a while, and felt that it was necessary to try it out. The Bishan ointment lacked a few herbs, but it mainly relied on this. If it could be made, it would also have the effect of removing scars and stopping bleeding. However, Wang Jin looked at the herbs in his hand with an ugly expression. After getting this herb, he doesn't know how to cook it, let alone mash it into mud. How delicate is this body, he has tried it in his previous life. Seeing the little lunatic in front of him froze again, his expression changed several times before he said a word. The man didn't know whether Wang Jin was wandering in a fugue or just fell insane again. He shook his head slightly, picked out the purple flowers from the pile of weeds in front of him, handed them to Wang Jin and said, Here. Wang Jin came back to his senses and looked at the herbs in the man's hand, only 4 or 5 in total. Wang Jin's agile eyes glanced at the medicinal materials in his hand, and then at the medicinal materials in the man's hand. Following the man's hand, his gaze moved upwards, and he saw the strong and powerful arms of the man. A cunning flashed in his eyes, and he gently put his own herb into the man's hand. Yuan Heng looked at the little lunatic suspiciously. Wang Jin ordered, You boil them and grind them into mud for me. The tone was that of a habitual order. The man's hands froze slightly, and he looked at Wang Jin with disapproval. These are just weeds, you. The man didn't continue, because the little lunatic in front of him was already staring at him fiercely, looking like a willful and dissatisfied little beast. The eyes, which were still filled with water vapor after crying just now, were reddish, and it seemed that as long as they were slightly stimulated, the eyes that seemed to be filled with clear springs would immediately overflow with water again. The man swallowed the words of refusal, and the disapproval in his eyes gradually turned into helplessness. He shrunk his knuckles, put the 4 or 5 grasses aside and said, Okay, wait until I wash these. The man pointed to a pile of weeds in front of him. The weeds were piled up like a hill. Wang Jin frowned and said dissatisfiedly, How long will it take to wash? Soon. The man said, his movements paused slightly. He raised his eyes and glanced at Wang Jin, thought for a while and said, If you want to hurry up, together. He asked tentatively, and Wang Jin instantly showed a disgusted expression. Seeing this, the man didn't say anything, and his men moved faster. Suddenly, a slender white and tender hand appeared in front of his eyes. The hand hesitated for a while under his eyes, and reached out to the vines below. The man's lips curled up a little. As soon as that hand touched the weeds, it retracted as if it had been electrocuted, accompanied by a light cry of pain, just like a kitten. And there were a few drops of bright red dripping on the green grass below. The man's smile froze on his face. He hurriedly raised his head and stepped forward, caught up with the retracting hand, and held it in his own. Sure enough, a long was drawn at the tip of the slender finger, and blood was trickling from the gash. The man stared at the wound speechlessly, unable to speak for a while. At first, I thought this little lunatic's hands were unreasonably soft, but I didn't expect that they were so tender that they could be scratched by weeds. Blood, blood, it hurts to death. Wang Jin looked at the wound, feeling so wronged that he couldn't help himself. The man sighed lightly, and bowed his head towards the wound. From Wang Jin's angle, he could still see the flexible creature protruding slightly from between his lips. Wang Jin was stunned. Before he knew what the man wanted to do, he felt his fingertips wet, and a strange feeling came from the wound, spread all over his limbs, and rushed straight to the top of his head, making his scalp numb. His fingertips trembled, his knuckles shrank, and he quickly withdrew his hand from the man's hand. You, what are you doing? Wang Jin asked with a trembling voice, protecting his hand. The man frowned, as if he couldn't understand Wang Jin's big reaction. He patiently explained, the orc's saliva can stop bleeding, just give you tian. Tian? No. Wang Jin blatantly refused, which was too strange. Please invite me a doctor, or a pharmacist. Wang Jin said. The man's brows were further tightened. It's a little injury, there's no need to call a pharmacist. A little bit hurts a ghost, you go ask me for money. Wang Jin froze for a moment. He had no money, and the world didn't recognize silver. In the past, when he was injured a little, everyone in the house had to take care of him, but now. Wang Jin shrugged sadly and frustrated. The man looked at the listless little lunatic in front of him for a while, and got up. Wang Jin looked up and saw the man walking out. Wang Jin reached out and grabbed his animal clothes. Where are you going? The man said, I'll try and see if I can invite a pharmacist from the tribe. Wang Jin shrank his knuckles, tightened the man's veterinarian, and said with difficulty, no need. In this world, doctors and pharmacists are in short supply. The Danmu tribe has only one pharmacist, whose status is very high, so it is strange that he can be hired. You go and get this for me. I won't need a pharmacist when I'm done. Wang Jin pointed to the grass on the ground that was put aside by the man. The man turned his head to look at the little lunatic. There wasn't much pain on the little lunatic's face, but his lips were pouting slightly, as if he was throwing a temper tantrum and wanted to be coaxed. This little lunatic speaks crazily and behaves strangely, but he looks really good. With a light look in those black and white eyes, the whole heart can be softened, and the look of loss makes people want to agree to all his requests. It's just that this nonsense. Forget it, this is my brother. If he doesn't obey, whoever obeys. The man squatted down, picked up the few grasses, took them to the side of the water tank, washed them, and entered the house. Wang Jin followed step by step, like a super clingy pet. The man followed him and led him into the inner kitchen. The kitchen was a little brighter than the front, but it was still very dark overall. The man took a porcelain bowl, filled it with water, put grass in it, lit a fire, and set it aside to cook. The fire was very fierce, and there were very few medicinal herbs, and they softened after a short time. When the water was boiled dry, the man pounded the medicinal herbs, which were actually just a little more than a finger. Wang Jin looked at the broken pieces with bright eyes, and stretched out his wounded hand. Although the wound was unintentional, it came in a timely manner. Although this Bishan ointment is used to remove scars, it can actually treat small wounds. Such a small amount of medicine is not enough to remove a man's scars. It is more appropriate to use his small wound to test the medicine. The man was taken aback, as if he didn't understand what Wang Jin meant by reaching out his hand suddenly. Wang Jin showed his wound and said eagerly, "Put that on." The man frowned, opened his mouth to say something, finally squeezed some powder and smelled it, as if to make sure it was not harmful, and after confirming, he obediently applied it to the little lunatic's hand. After Wang Jin applied the herbs, he became much quieter, sitting beside the man with his head bowed, not knowing what to think. The man let out a long breath when he saw this, and quickly dealt with the weeds in front of him. After the grass is cleaned and dried, it can make the bed more comfortable. With an extra brother in the family, I can no longer live a casual life with myself. Only. The man thought about the little lunatic being scratched by the weeds just now, and secretly thought that he had to get a big animal skin to cover it, otherwise the delicate skin of the little lunatic would have many more cuts when he slept on it. Wang Jin didn't know that the man had thought a lot about him. He focused on observing the changes in the wound, wanting to know if his dream was real. In the prescription of Bishan ointment in his mind, the herb must be boiled, and it must be boiled. Just now he stared at the man doing it, and confirmed that the grass is rotten, and the subsequent pounding just made it into a mud. The medicinal mud had just been applied, and it would take tomorrow to see the effect at the earliest. After staring at it for a while, Wang Jin knew that he would not get the result today. He sat blankly for a while, and went to see what the man was doing when he was bored. The man had finished processing the grass at this time and was cooking in the kitchen. He cooked a large piece of unknown meat. The meat was cooked whitish, but there was no oil at all. When it was served, it was just a large piece in the middle of the table, without any main food or other side dishes. In front of Wang Jin, there was an extra bowl of glutinous rice that he had thrown before. It was sticky, and there were still some yellow particles in it. It was these yellow particles that affected the taste of the whole glutinous rice, and the taste. Wang Jin recalled the sip he drank before, and wanted to vomit again. With an ugly expression, he picked up the bowl of mush and was about to throw it away, but was stopped by the sharp-eyed man raising his hand. "You're going to throw it away, there's nothing to eat tonight." Wang Jin's hand holding the bowl didn't let it go, and he didn't throw it away. His complexion turned blue and white at times, it was ugly as hell. The man reached out and took his hand down, and stuffed the spoon in the bowl into Wang Jin's hand. "I guess you like sweet food, so I didn't put any salt or seasoning this time, I just put honey, you should taste it first. I might like to eat it." Seeing the man's sincerity, Wang Jin put a spoonful of it in his mouth in disgust. Unpalatable. Still unpalatable. Wang Jin frowned, the taste was so rough that the coating on his tongue was sore. The taste was not so disgusting, but in terms of deliciousness, it was still far away. Seeing Wang Jin start, the man grabbed the white meat on the table and started to eat. Wang Jin didn't want to move after taking a mouthful of the mush in his bowl. He looked at the man and saw him chewing the white meat, which looked delicious. Wang Jin's eyes turned to the plate of meat on the table, and more than half of the plate of meat had gone. Wang Jin curled his lips. This man is too much, he gave himself such an unpalatable food, but he himself ate meat. There were no chopsticks on the table. Wang Jin hesitated for a while, reached out to grab the white meat, grabbed a large piece and put it in his mouth to bite. Bite down, the teeth hurt, and the white meat didn't move at all, at most there were 2 more tooth marks. Wang Jin looked at Biro in astonishment, his face full of disbelief. Is this meat or stone? He couldn't hold back, and made a sound. The man raised his head, saw his appearance, and laughed out loud. Of course it's meat, but this meat guy can't bite. As the man said, he took the meat from Wang Jin's hand, turned his hand into sharp claws, and cut a thin slice for Wang Jin. Wang Jin ate it into his mouth and spit it out after a while. Even if it is a thin slice, it is too woody to bite, and it has no taste at all. The man shook his head with a smile, motioned Wang Jin to look at the bowl of mush in front of him and said, "Eat the one in front of you. I'll find Byakuo for you tomorrow, and I'll settle for it today." Wang Jin looked outside, and it was indeed getting dark. Wang Jin ate 2 more mouthfuls of mush, but still pushed away in disgust and walked away. The man stopped persuading him when he saw this, and ate the rest of his mush after he finished eating the meat. At night, Wang Jin was sitting in the courtyard outside, feeling a little dazed. He had really resurrected his soul on someone else. Just as Wang Jin was lost in thought, suddenly there was a bowl next to him, and the man came over from his side and sat beside him. Wang Jin frowned and stared at the bowl, but didn't pick it up. The man said, "Honey water, drink some to fill your stomach." Wang Jin took it, and took a sip as if trying. It was very thick honey water. The sweet taste filled the mouth instantly, the taste buds throbbed with satisfaction, and Wang Jin narrowed his eyes satisfied. This is called food. After knowing that it was delicious, Wang Jin drank happily one after another with the bowl in his hand, needless to say by the man. Seeing his appearance, the man smiled and shook his head. "You little lunatic, you are so picky about eating, I don't know how you survived before. The author has something to say, there was no update yesterday, and there is another chapter today. Before? He was fine before. There are a group of maids around him, serving him food, clothing, housing, and transportation, and a group of guests at home, chatting with him, making paintings and poetry, playing guns and singing songs for him, and occasionally when the mood comes, they play the piano and flute together, so uncomfortable. Where is it like now? Wang Jin shook his head and let go of the past. Those are all things of the previous life. People always have to look forward. I don't mention it for now. What kind of life did this original lunatic live before? How come you have such a delicate body? Wang Jin was also a little curious, but his mind was empty, and he didn't have any memories of before coming to this tribe. He was in the tribe. The leader of the Danmu tribe gave him a room that was worse than this man. There was only a bed in the room and nothing else. Every day, a brother named Amu brings him food. That person has sprained feet, but he has a gentle temperament. Yuan is so crazy that he doesn't know how to take care of himself. Amu is taking care of him. However, Amu didn't always accompany Yuan Shen, he appeared once a day, and after he left, some other brothers would come to grab Yuan Shen's food. Yuan Shen's salute was also taken away in this way. The original body was insane, he couldn't speak clearly, those people robbed him, he couldn't ask others for help, he could only attack others to protect himself. If the attack was fierce, there would be a big scene, and after the big scene, the group of brothers who robbed him he poured dirty water on Yuan Bo, saying that he was a complete lunatic who only attacked people. Few people in the tribe got close to Yuan Shen, and everyone acquiesced that Yuan Shen was a lunatic who only attacked people. But in fact, the original body does not attack people who are not hostile to him. Moreover, with the original body's own strength and this pampered body, it really doesn't have much aggressiveness. Amu has explained it to everyone, but no one seems to believe him. Because of this, everyone hid from the original body and hid far away. Otherwise, with the appearance of the original body, even a lunatic would be very popular with orcs in this foreign world where brothers are scarce. Amu. Wang Jin lowered his head, holding the bowl, and murmured softly. The man heard it sharply, and repeated, Amu. That sloppy-legged brother in the tribe? That man's temperament is quite gentle, the leader told him to let him take care of this little lunatic's 3 meals a day. I heard that for a while, this little lunatic would attack anyone who approached him, except that Ger. When he first heard about this, Yuan Hung was thinking, this lunatic is a person who remembers well, he would not attack him knowing that Brother Mu took care of him and treated him well, now it seems. Yuan Hung glanced at Wang Jin, who looked softer under the moonlight, and his brows softened a little. Now it seems that this little lunatic is indeed a good person, at least he has not shown his fierce minions to him. He got up and rubbed Wang Jin's head. Even the hair of this little lunatic was soft, like the fluff of some small animals. It was very comfortable to touch. Go to bed after drinking, go to bed early, tomorrow I will find Brother Mu to accompany you. Wang Jin raised his eyes, and the stars all over the sky were reflected in his eyes. From Yuan Hang's perspective, the little lunatic's eyes seemed to be filled with stars, so beautiful that it made people's heart agitate uncontrollably. I want to take a shower, he said, handing the empty bowl to the man. Bath? In the tribe, many people only take a bath every 3 or 4 days. This little lunatic had already been washed by his elder brother before he was sent. Unexpectedly, he asked for a bath so soon. They beastmen take a bath and just go to the river to wash it clean, but my brother can't soak in cold water. At this time, if the little lunatic wants to take a bath, he has to fetch water and come back to burn it for him. The man watched Wang Jin's back as he entered the house, resignedly picked up the water tank beside him, and walked towards the river far away from his home in the dark. It was already half an hour after the water was boiled, and the family did not prepare my brother's bathing utensils, so the man borrowed one from another family in the tribe, poured the water for him, and took another animal coat for him. Wang Jin took the animal clothes, turned them over, frowned and said, "No pants." "Pants?" The man looked puzzled. Wang Jin understood at a glance, no. He took a deep breath, put the clothes on the chair next to him, spread his hands and said, "Okay, wait for me to change clothes and wash." Before he finished speaking, Wang Jin stared at the man and suddenly fell silent. He forgot that this person is an orc, and he is a brother of this world, that kind of relationship can happen, and, their relationship, is similar to the broken sleeve in his previous life. Wang Jin looked at the man for a while, and put down his hand in embarrassment. You go out, I will call you after washing." The man obediently went out. Wang Jin took off his clothes, avoided the wound and half-lead in a porcelain bucket similar to a wooden bucket, letting the hot water overflow his body. The water temperature is just right, and the man is actually kind to him. After all, he has nothing now, and he is still a lunatic in the perception of others. The original body was forced to come here last night. The man didn't come back last night. He let the original body lie down all night and didn't give the original body a decent wedding. Although the world is very backward, there is still a ceremony to marry a brother. Yes, the man didn't do anything for the original body, which is already very obvious, and he also rejected this messy Mandarin duck. No, Mandarin ducks. It's just that men in this world are very responsible. If you have a brother, you will be responsible to the end, whether you like it or not. Moreover, they are all monogamous. Once you have one, there will be no other. This situation is the best for Wang Jin now. If he is responsible, the man will not abandon himself. If he doesn't like the original body, he won't touch him. Then he doesn't have to worry about his chastity issue for the time being. Thinking of this, Wang Jin felt relieved. The hot water made Wang Jin feel dizzy, and he was sleepy again. After washing himself in a daze, Wang Jin got up and put on the animal clothes. The fur coat was a bit bigger than the one he was wearing before, and it didn't fit very well, but it was well covered where it should be covered. After Wang Jin finished dressing, he rolled on the bed, yelled out, and fell asleep on his back. As if the mess in the house had nothing to do with him. The man entered the room and saw the mess in the room, shook his head, and tidied up resignedly. After tidying up, he went back to the house, and the little lunatic had already slept soundly. In the darkness, the appearance of the little lunatic could not be seen clearly, only a small lump could be seen on the bed, huddled in a corner. Just as he lay down on the bed, the lump trembled, rolled into his arms, and lay on his pillow. On his arm. The man froze and didn't dare to move his whole body. The whole body of the person lying in the crook of his arms was limp, as if he had no bones. "Dude, it's really soft." The man felt a little hot at the base of his ears. It stands to reason that tonight is their first night of sleeping together, they should. The man slightly pushed Wang Jin away and turned his face away. "Forget it, they haven't done the ceremony yet, so it's not appropriate to speak rashly," let alone the little lunatic fell asleep. After staying for a few days, get ready and make up for the little lunatic. Marrying a brother is a big deal, and it can't be done hastily. Wang Jin didn't know the man's plan at all. In fact, he was able to sleep with such peace of mind, but he just felt that the man was not interested in him and would not touch him. The next morning, when Wang Jin woke up, the man was no longer in the room. The man's bed was actually a stone bed with nothing on it, and it was very hard. "I didn't feel anything after sleeping for a while before, but after sleeping all night, Wang Jin felt that his whole body was going to fall apart. He rubbed the sore place and walked out in a daze. After waking up for a while, he hurriedly looked at the wound from yesterday. After the medicine dregs were wiped off, there was only a little mark left on the huge opening, which didn't hurt at all. This medicine really works. Dreams are real. Wang Jin was mixed with joy and sorrow, and his complexion was very complicated for a while. If the dream is true, that is to say, originally he could have the ability to eat or wear or use endlessly. If he really has such an ability, he is equivalent to owning a lot of property, and he can live a good life by exchanging it with others for other needs. It is not difficult to restore the life of the former son. But now these abilities have only been formulated. If he wants to own it, he has to find materials to make it himself. Wang Jin vomited blood. He finally understood what the old man said about regret and the last sneer. That old man tricked him. He is a son who is used to being served by others, how could he do these things? The man was fiddling with the weeds from yesterday. The bed was too hard, and the little lunatic could not sleep well at night. The vines were not dry enough yesterday, so they had to be spread out to dry early today, so that they could be used at night. Spreading out the vines, the man turned around, and saw the little lunatic standing at the door, looking down at his fingers, not knowing what to think. The man walked over, followed his gaze, and saw that the wound that was still bleeding yesterday was not only scabbed, but even the scar was almost gone, leaving only a small mark. The man's complexion changed, he grabbed his hand and took a closer look. It is indeed good. The recovery ability of the orcs is considered strong, but it takes a day or two to recover from the wounds. This little lunatic can. Is it yesterday's grass? This little lunatic is not ordering people casually, nor is he messing around, he knows that grass is useful. Is this person really not a lunatic as he himself said? The man looked at Wang Jin with a complicated expression. You. I'm hungry. Wang Jin withdrew his hand, watched the man pat his stomach and said. The man's words were blocked in his throat by the accusing eyes begging for food. He paused, and just like yesterday, he reached out and rubbed the little lunatic's head and said, I've prepared it for you, Bai Yuguo is in the room. On the table. Wang Jin's eyes lit up, he turned and went into the house. On the table in the room, there was indeed a sliced white jade fruit lying on it, and a spoon was thoughtfully placed beside it. Wang Jin walked over, didn't think about rinsing his mouth, and directly carried it to eat. The tender lips were moistened with a layer of water, thinking that the lips were extraordinarily tender, the man's eyes darkened, he walked up to him and sat down, the little lunatic didn't realize it, he just looked down at his white jade fruit, full of heart and eyes, it seems that as long as there is this white jade fruit to eat, it is enough, and there is no other extra thoughts. Except for a lunatic with an abnormal mind, who would be so pure. The man shook his head and said softly, eat slowly, I picked an extra one this morning, it's enough for you. The little lunatic replied vaguely, his cheeks were stuffed to the brim, and he was so cute that he wanted to hold him in his arms and rub him well. The man coughed lightly, turned his face away with red ears, I'll let Brother Mew accompany you later, I'm going to the jungle to hunt some prey and come back. Hunt for an animal whose hide is large enough to cover the bed. Wang Jin swallowed the food in his mouth, and said, remember to pick more of that herb from yesterday, it can remove the scars, and then. Wang Jin suddenly moved closer to the man, and tapped the scar on the man's cheek with the end of the spoon, at that time, you can remove this annoying scar, and you will be a handsome boy. The little lunatic got very close, and his breath sprayed on Yuan Heng's face. The warm breath seemed to be burning, and it spread through the skin to the whole body, making every part of the body scream a kind of numbness. The man's knuckles contracted suddenly, and his palms clenched the fur coat at his knees. He felt his heart beating fast and loudly, as if someone was beating a drum on it. Brother Hung? Are you there? There was a sudden voice at the door. The man was so startled that he got up in a panic. Su is Brother Mew, I'm here, I'll go out and have a look. After speaking, the man didn't dare to look at the little lunatic's expression, and went straight out. When Wang Jin heard Brother Mew, he put the white jade fruit in his hand on the table, and followed him out. The brother outside looks gentle and good-looking, with a slender body and a Wengzi smile on his face. Seeing the two coming out, he immediately stepped forward, Brother Hung. Brother Mew. The man greeted, and the brother Mu looked at Wang Jin and gave him a friendly smile. Wang Jin remembered the careful care of the original body by this brother Mu before. His complexion softened a little, he softened his voice, and called, "Amu." This Amu sound was soft, and it was so soft that it made people's hearts soften. Brother Mu was a little surprised. When he was taking care of Wang Jin, he couldn't speak clearly, and he couldn't even say his own name, but suddenly he could call himself. Brother Mu happily took Wang Jin's hand. "Ah Jin, you can finally call me smoothly. Well, I can not only call you, but also talk a lot." Wang Jin curled his lips and smiled sweetly. The man watching from the side was uncomfortable. This little lunatic has never called himself before, he just called someone else so affectionately, and never smiled so sweetly at himself. The man touched his nose, always feeling that he was cut off by these two people. "Okay, then I'll go first," Yuan Heng said beside him. But no one paid attention to him. Mu Ger kept pulling Wang Jin to ask questions. Wang Jin looked at Mu Ger. The intimacy and dependence in his eyes hurt Yuan Heng's eyes. Fortunately, this brother Mu is a brother. I was called by myself to accompany the little lunatic, otherwise, I was really afraid that I would fight Mu Ger on the spot. The man suppressed the regret in his heart, took a deep breath, turned and left. Wang Jin glanced at the direction the man was leaving, and pulled Mu Ger into the house. "Amu, have you had breakfast?" Wang Jin stuffed the untouched white jade fruit on the other half of the table into brother Mu's arms. "This is delicious, I'll eat it for you." Mu Ger looked down at the fruit in his arms. The milky white pulp was pleasantly moist, and the fragrance lingered in his nose, which lingered for a long time. "This fruit is by Yu-Gi-Oh!" Brother Mu looked very surprised. Wang Jin raised his head and thought for a while, then nodded. "The man did say that this fruit is called white jade fruit." Mu Ger took a deep breath, and after a while, he raised a smile and said, "This fruit grows in a deep hole, and there are often reptiles like giant pythons in that hole to attack the orcs, and it is extremely difficult to pick. The orcs in the tribe are it's rare to take risks for a fruit. Brother Hung can pick this for you, it's really good for you." Brother Mu put the fruit back on the table. "Fruit is rare, you can eat it, I ate it earlier." Giant python. Wang Jin thought of the boa constrictor he knew, his body trembled, he looked down at the fruit that he held in his arms and ate half of it. His mood was a bit complicated. "Is it dangerous to pick this? Is it dangerous?" "It's very dangerous," Brother Mu said with a smile, "so, cherish Brother Hung." As he said that, Mu Ger paused and said, "Actually, I wanted to come to see you yesterday, but my family Yuan didn't let me come, for fear that I would disturb you." Yuan is Mu Ger's orc, his full name is Le Iwan. Wang Jin has only heard Mu Ger mention it, but he has never met him. "Will your Awan pick white jade fruits for you?" Wang Jin asked. Brother Mu was stunned, shook his head slightly and said, "My Awan is a relatively weak orc in the tribe. Even if he wants to pick the white jade fruit, I will not let him. I am afraid that something will happen to him." "Is it so dangerous?" Wang Jin suddenly couldn't eat any more, and when the man came back, "Tell him not to pick this, or, see if he can plant it." He put the fruit aside, ran to the kitchen to look through the honey pot that the man made honey water for him yesterday, and when he found it, he planned to take it out, and took an extra spoon in his hand, intending to share it with Mu Ger. Mu Ger followed Wang Jin all the way, watching over him, and was even more surprised when he saw him dig out the honey. He directly raised his hand to stop Wang Jin from moving the pot. "Ah Jin, you are going to eat honey, honey is delicious." As he spoke, he gave the spoon to Mu Ger, and he took the first spoonful and put it directly into his mouth. The sweet taste and luscious taste made him squint in enjoyment, and took a second spoonful. He likes sweetness. Even if he eats honey directly, he won't find it too sweet, but if he eats too much, he will get tired. Brother Mu looked at Wang Jin's movements, his face changed, and he said, this honey is more precious than white jade fruit. Ajahn, you just eat it like this. What is so precious about honey? What is so precious when you can buy a jar for a tael of silver? Wang Jin looked at Mu Geer suspiciously. Mu Geer gasped, quickly sealed the honey jar, pulled Wang Jin out of the kitchen, and moved Bai Yuguo into his arms. Be obedient, eat this. Wang Jin was speechless for a moment. Brother Mu patiently explained, although Brother Hung loves you, don't scare people away. This is honey and white jade fruit. If he thinks you are difficult to raise, how can I not have you? Is this difficult to raise? The corners of Wang Jin's eyes twitched. Brother Mu seemed to feel that he had said something useless, and chuckled lightly. You are a little lunatic, and you don't know these things. What's the use of me talking so much? I'm not crazy. Wang Jin muttered in a low voice, but Mu Geer didn't seem to hear. He shook his head and said, forget it, eat, Brother Hung loves you, maybe it won't be like this. If this is the case, at worst, it will be the same as before, and I will send you food. Wang Jin froze. Did Brother Mu bring him something to eat? Most of them are some minced meat, which is too hard to be knocked, and it is harder to swallow than the one given by the man. He doesn't want it. Wang Jin lowered his head and said sullenly, I know, I will restrain myself. Restrain the pettiness he developed when he was a rich man. As if he didn't expect Wang Jin to reply, Mu Geer raised his head and looked at Wang Jin in surprise, and saw that he looked clear, well-groomed, and his facial features were vivid, not like an unconscious lunatic. Mu Geer had never seen such an angry Wang Jin, so he couldn't help being stunned for a moment, and after a while, he said softly, Brother Hung really has a solution, your madness seems to be cured a lot. He really wasn't crazy, these people didn't believe him. Wang Jin sighed in frustration. Forget it, a lunatic is a lunatic, just treat it after being crazy. Wang Jin rolled his eyes, followed the trend and said, yes, actually. I'm cured of my madness. Upon hearing the words, Mu Geer blinked at Wang Jin, as if he didn't believe it. Okay. Wang Jin nodded fiercely. Mu Geer touched his body, took out a beast tooth from his body, put it in front of Wang Jin's eyes and asked, then tell me what it is. Animal teeth? No, you shouldn't ask him such an idiotic question, right? Wang Jin looked at the animal tooth. A hole was drilled above the animal tooth, and a red rope was hung. He pondered for a while, then replied, necklace. It's animal teeth. Brother Mu smiled and said, you are still not awake. What nonsense are you talking about necklaces? What is a necklace? Wang Jin's eyes twitched. In this world, don't you even know what a necklace is? Don't know about jewelry? Wang Jin's silence seemed depressing to Brother Mu, and he comforted him softly, although it's not good, but compared to before, your madness is indeed much better. Wang Jin didn't want to speak. He spooned the pulp and started to eat again. The man picked this fruit back, and he would not eat it for nothing. In order to prevent himself from being irritated by what Mu Geer said, Wang Jin stuffed the fruit that Mu Geer put on the table into his arms and said, I picked them all back, let's eat. This. Brother Mu wanted to put it back. Brother Hung picked something for you to eat, I can't eat it well. Wang Jin pointed to the corner and said, there are still more, you can eat this, I eat weird ones alone, just take it with me. Seeing that there was indeed another one in the corner, and seeing Wang Jin's resolute attitude, Mu Geer lowered his eyebrows and started eating like Wang Jin with a spoon. After taking a bite, he was completely overwhelmed by the soft and tender flesh, and there was only the sound of eating for a while. After eating, Brother Mu sighed with satisfaction, it's delicious. This is the second time I eat white jade fruit. The first time was when I married a Yuan. I miss it so much. So bitter. Wang Jin felt a little sympathetic to Brother Mu, but when he thought of his own situation, he didn't seem qualified to sympathize with others. Hey, come to think of it, Ah Jin, Have you ever gone back? Brother Mu asked Wang Jin as if he suddenly thought of something. Wang Jin looked at Brother Mu suspiciously. Mu Ger explained, it's the room you lived in before. Have you ever gone back? I remember you still have a piece of clothing that I hid under the bed. Have you brought it? Clothing? When Brother Mu mentioned this, Wang Jin remembered it. The salute of the original body was almost taken away, except for the clothes on the body. Later, when Brother Mu came to take care of the original body, he helped the original body take off the clothes and wash them, and put on the animal clothes. Mu Ger hid the washed clothes under the bed to prevent others from snatching them. Mu Ger told Yuan Shen that he wanted him to bring him to the orc's house when he got married, but when Yuan Heng was rewarded to Yuan Heng, he was dragged here and the clothes were forgotten. Wang Jin shook his head, and Brother Mu stood up suddenly, then I'll get it back for you. That clothes are a good thing, they can't be robbed. Brother Mu, who was robbed of the original salute, was present, and he also stopped him, and even talked to the leader, but after all, it was a person who spoke lightly. In the end, nothing happened. Wang Jin originally thought that it was just a piece of clothing, so he didn't want it. But it suddenly occurred to me that the clothes seemed to be made of silk and satin, and there were obscene pants. He immediately stood up and said, I'm going to. Brother Mu hesitated a little, I'll just go. Before Wang Jin saw those who bullied him, he would attack them crazily. Brother Mu was worried that Wang Jin would lose control. Wang Jin said firmly, I want to go too. Seeing what Brother Mu was worried about, Wang Jin said again, I'm much better now, and I won't attack people for no reason. You see, I'm very sober now, so let me go together? I'll stay here, it's been 2 days. It's true that I haven't left this house for 2 days. Brother Mu was a little soft-hearted, and seeing Wang Jin's clear eyes again, he hesitated for a moment and then nodded. Wang Jin loosened his frowning brows, and followed Mu Ger out the door. There was a row of trees in front of the house where the man lived, and the trees blocked the outside scenery. Only after walking out did he realize that the outside looked like a small village. There will be a family at a certain distance, and the road connecting them is a small dirt road, which has been trampled out by living people. We will also meet some orcs and brothers on the road, and most of them look at Wang Jin with curiosity and doubts. Brother Mu greeted them one by one, and then pulled Wang Jin away, for fear that Wang Jin would be unhappy if he had too much contact with them. Not long after, the two arrived in front of a dilapidated hut. As soon as Mu Ger breathed a sigh of relief, he saw 3 brothers walking out of that room. The 3 brothers looked pretty and were all dressed in animal clothes, but some even wore jewelry on their hands or feet. They were made of gold and silver. Yes, it is gold and silver. The brother in the lead had a silk scarf hanging around his waist, and that silk scarf was made of silk. There are good things in this world. It's just that these things belonged to the original body in Wang Jin's impression, but the original body didn't remember how to get them. Wang Jin looked again and found that the brother standing at the front was still holding a familiar package. Brother Ju, the thing in your hand belongs to Ajin. Before Wang Jin could speak, Brother Mu had already stepped forward anxiously, grabbing the package with one hand. Brother Orange grabbed the package and said, how can we prove it's his, it's ours? After finishing speaking, Brother Orange winked at the 2 behind him, and the 2 stepped forward, helped Brother Orange pull the package and said, yes, it's ours. Brother Mu was very angry, you have taken so many things from Ajin, and this bag is just his clothes. You can let Ajin take it to your own beastman's house. Otherwise, he has nothing. He has nothing, none of your business. Brother Ju said fiercely. The author has something to say, I worked overtime tonight, so I didn't code it until now, okay please collect it. That's right, it's none of your business. A person behind him echoed. Another person stepped forward and pushed Mu Ger, Xiaopozi, get out of here. Mu Ger's leg itself was a bit sloped, and being pushed so suddenly, he staggered and almost fell down. Wang Jin frowned, and stepped forward to support him. Brother Mu hurriedly stood in front of Wang Jin, "Don't go too far." The three of them looked at Wang Jin, who was behind Brother Mu, with a very arrogant expression. "How about we just go too far?" Mu Gr's face was flushed, his lips were trembling, but he was so stupid that he couldn't find any words to refute, and his whole body was shaking with anger. From the moment Wang Jin saw a few people, the inhuman torture that the original body suffered before kept appearing in his mind. Those inhuman tortures seemed to have awakened the original consciousness remaining in Wang Jin's body, and it was desperately dominating Wang Jin, making Wang Jin tear them apart. Wang Jin struggled with restraint, his eyes gradually turned red, and his breathing became heavy. The leader of the three, Brother Ju, saw Wang Jin's appearance, snorted coldly with disdain, and said sarcastically, "Hey, the little lunatic wants to hit someone again." "Come on," the man said provocatively, looked at the two brothers beside him and said, "There are three of us, and you can't beat them alone, have you forgotten?" At the beginning, when the original body attacked people, it looked terrifying, but in fact, because of its physical fitness, it didn't have much attack power. In the end, it was the original body who was pressed and beaten by these three people. They beat someone, but the villain complained first, biting the original body back and going mad. Thinking back on this, Wang Jin was so angry that his breath was stuck in his heart, and he was so uncomfortable that he almost lost his breath. If he was still the little prince in his previous life, he would definitely bring the nursing home of his mansion and beat these people until his mother didn't even recognize them. Wang Jin bent his knuckles, pressed his fingertips hard, and pressed several marks on Mu Ger's arm. Brother Mu was in pain, and looked back at Wang Jin, only to see that his facial features were distorted and his expression was irritable. He looked like a wounded little animal, ready to go forward and desperately at any time. Brother Mu felt sore, and quickly reached out to hold it. He took his hand, patted it comfortingly, then turned around and glared at the few people angrily, and said in a loud voice, "Enough is enough. Jin has married the number one warrior of the tribe now, and he is protected now. You bully him, be careful, Brother Hung makes you look good." Hearing this, several people's expressions changed slightly, and they shrank a little. Seeing this, Mu Ger's eyes lit up slightly, and he said loudly, "You guys return the things, and I will pretend that what happened today never happened, and I won't tell you." "Brother Hung, how is it?" Brother Mu stretched out his hand to the three of them, wanting Brother Orange to hand over the package. Brother Ju looked at the package, then at the two of them. The hesitation on his face gradually returned to his domineering look just now. "Yuan Hung? Forget it, he will stand up for this little lunatic? Are you kidding me?" When Brother Ju mentioned this, the two brothers next to him seemed to have been enlightened, and they regained their bullying aura just now. Brother Lang on the right answered the words and said sarcastically, "That's right, who is Brother Hung, the number one warrior in the tribe? He doesn't even look down on this little lunatic. Didn't you go back at all?" Brother Ching on the left answered, "That's right, you didn't even give this little lunatic a gift, so you don't even admit that this little lunatic has passed the door." Several people sang together, and what they said seemed to be true. Brother Mu's face turned green and pale, and he said violently, "You are talking nonsense. Brother Hung really hurts Jin. It hurts? It doesn't count if you say it." Brother Ju said. He swaggered closer to Brother Mu and Wang Jin and said, "If you want me to say, Brother Yu is worthy of being the number one warrior of the tribe, this little lunatic." Brother Ju didn't say any more, but he showed a very disdainful smile to Wang Jin. His eyes were full of contempt. Wang Jin couldn't bear the irritability in his heart anymore. He raised his foot and kicked the man in the belly, and the foul words burst out, "I'll go to your ancestor." Brother Ju didn't seem to expect that Wang Jin would come like this. He was kicked straight on, and the belly is the most vulnerable place of a human being. At that moment, Oops screamed in pain, covered his stomach and knelt down, his face turned pale. "You dare to hit us? Obviously they only hit one person, but the expressions of the other two changed, as if they had hit them. They stepped forward fiercely to push Wang Jin. Seeing this, Mu Gear hurriedly stood in front of Wang Jin to block their attack. For a while, it became a mess. Mu Gear protected Wang Jin and retreated repeatedly. The house where Wang Jin originally lived was on the outskirts of the tribe. At this moment, the two had been forced to the edge of the tribe. With no way to retreat, Mu Gear stretched out his hand and pushed the person who was pressing forward, and began to fight back. When the three of them saw Mu Geer counterattack, they became even more angry, and the offensive became more and more fierce. Brother Mu was a little overwhelmed, and Wang Jin was already dizzy from the beating. Thinking about who he wanted to hit back then, how many times would hundreds of people act for him if he didn't just use his words? Where is there such a person who goes to the field by himself? While distracted, he was pushed out by the orange brother, his whole body lost weight, and fell backwards uncontrollably. Mu Gear was startled, and hurriedly stretched out his hand to pull it, but was pushed by the person behind him, and fell down. After the three of them pushed the two of them, they clapped their hands triumphantly. After a while, Lang Gear among the three of them came to his senses. His face turned pale, and he pulled Brother Orange and said, "Brother Orange, this seems to be the outskirts of the tribe." Brother Orange's face remained unchanged and he said, "The outer area is the outer area. The outer area is the safe zone of the jungle. There are orcs patrolling it. They will kill them. Just teach them a lesson and let them be arrogant." Lang Gear pulled Brother Orange's animal clothes, and said in a low voice, "No, Brother Orange, this is the residence of the little lunatic, and it is the most remote periphery. The orcs patrol only to the residence of the little lunatic. Crossed the line." When Brother Lang said this, the other two reacted, and Brother Ching stammered, "In other words, this area is still a dangerous area for Brother." Brother Lang said with an expression of doing something wrong, "It's not just that, I remember that there is a deep hole here. The white jade fruit we ate in the past was found in that hole, and there was a giant python in the hole." Brother Ching tremblingly said, "Giant python, that, although that thing usually doesn't come out of the hole, but if it falls in." Brother Ju's face turned pale, "What nonsense! This murderer will be expelled from the tribe, don't talk nonsense." Brother Lang was about to cry, "What should we do? We..." Brother Orange turned around and glared at Brother Lang, stopping what he was going to say next. He paused and said, They're not sure that something will happen, don't scare yourself." The two brothers fell into the dangerous area, and the chances of surviving were very small. They said that there was no certainty that an accident would happen, but in fact it was different from an accident. Lang Gear and Ching Gear were in a trance. Brother Ju watched, and while his heart was flustered, a thought flashed through his mind. He took a deep breath and said, "Things, until now, we can only pretend that we don't know anything." Brother Lang and Brother Ching looked at Brother Orange in astonishment. Brother Orange said with a stern expression, "What are you looking at? Hurry up and put away your depressed looks, come on, take your things home, none of us have been here today." Brother Orange opened the package, and there was a whole body of white clothes in the package, including tops, pants, and bottoms. Brother Orange randomly distributed the clothes to the two, took one by himself, and left first, and the two followed closely. Thereafter, Wang Jin was awakened by the smoke, and a strong stench lingered under his breath, which lingered for a long time. He touched his nose, opened his eyes in a daze, and rolled his body, the pain was so painful. When he opened his eyes, there was darkness in front of him, as if he had fallen into a place where the sun could not shine. He squinted his eyes to adapt to the light, and suddenly, a pair of eyes the size of copper bells slammed into Wang Jin's. Wang Jin was so frightened that he couldn't make a sound, and even scrambled back a few steps, not caring about the pain in his body. The eyes blinked for a moment, then slowly rose, and Wang Jin realized that it was a snake head, a huge snake head, about 10 times his size. At this moment, the snake head was spitting out snake letter, and it was slowly approaching him. Its letter was thicker than his thigh, and the strong and unpleasant stench was emitted from its swallowing and spitting. Wang Jin had never seen such a big snake before, his face turned pale with fright, and he almost fainted. "Ah Jin? Are you there?" Suddenly, Mu Gr's voice came from a corner nearby, and Wang Jin saw that the snake turned its head and went towards the voice. Wang Jin's lips were trembling, his teeth were chattering, and he couldn't speak a complete sentence, but he managed to squeeze out a few words. Amu, hurry, run! Ah Jin! Brother Mu shouted, and then exclaimed, "The giant python!" Wang Jin looked over with terrified eyes, and saw Mu Gr slumped on the ground, looking forward tremblingly, as if petrified. And in front of him was the snake head just now. The snake head was pulled up, driving the snake body on the ground, and the ground where Wang Jin and Mu Gr were located was shaking instantly. When the snake head was pulled up to a certain extent, the snake head opened its mouth and attacked Mu Gr at an extremely fast speed. Amu. At the moment of crisis, Wang Jin didn't know where the courage came from, but he stood up with his weak legs and rushed towards Brother Mu. With such a pounce, Wang Jin closed his eyes as if he was dead. The severe pain imagined is gone, and the stench is also far away. The body was caught by something soft and warm, and Wang Jin opened his eyes. I saw that my body was a vigorous white tiger with a pair of white wings on both sides of the white tiger, and those wings were like angel wings. Wang Jin's body is completely soft, this is a snake and a tiger. I'm afraid this life will end. The white tiger retracted its wings, landed beside Mu Ger, and let Wang Jin down. Wang Jin's legs were so weak that he couldn't stand, and he collapsed on the ground together with Mu Gr. Brother Mu was speechless, but his trembling hands instinctively protected Wang Jin. Wang Jin's voice was a bit crying, "Amu." Mu Ger held Wang Jin even tighter, but he still didn't say a word. If you look carefully, you can see his teeth chattering, and he couldn't squeeze out any words at all. The white tiger glanced at the two of them. Wang Jin shrank his knuckles, tightened Mu Gr's skirt, and stared at the white tiger vigilantly, but who knew that the white tiger spread its wings and flapped its wings twice before attacking the boa constrictor ferociously and go. In addition to this white tiger, there were many more tigers around the giant python at some point, but those tigers did not have white wings. The dark cave can't be seen very clearly, only some vague shadows, and the hissing of snakes and the roaring of tigers can be heard. At the same time, the earth is shaking. After an unknown amount of time, when Wang Jin felt that his legs were going numb, a huge object fell down with a bang, kicking up a huge cloud of dust. After the dust cleared, Wang Jin took a closer look and found that the giant snake was lying on the ground dying. Its body didn't know when it had all appeared, so it surrounded itself. Surrounding the snake were a dozen tigers, and the white tiger was in the middle of the tigers, like the leader of the group of tigers. Is this the tiger that snatched them from the mouth of the snake as rations? Wang Jin's complexion turned even paler. But Mu Gr suddenly let go of Wang Jin, stood up on his weak legs, and walked towards a tiger in the tiger group with a limp. Return. Wang Jin reached out to grab him, but he didn't. The tiger also came out pacing. Wang Jin anxiously wanted to go forward, but suddenly found that the tiger was walking, its body changed, and it turned into a man. Awan. Wang Jin heard Mu brother call the tiger Awan. Wang Jin was stunned. After the change of Awan, the other dozen tigers also turned into human shapes one after another, and the white tiger in the middle also changed. Wang Jin is not unfamiliar with becoming human. Yuan Heng. Are these all monsters? Wang Jin felt a sudden pain in his head, and after a while, he remembered that this is a world of beastmen, and men have beast shapes. It's just that the original body has never seen an orc transforming in his memory, and Wang Jinggong has never seen it in this world. He didn't think of it for a while. Awan. Ger seemed to be terrified, and buried himself in the arms of that man, Awan, sobbing in a low voice, and that Awan stammered and comforted him at a loss. Wang Jin tried to stand up with his legs, but as soon as he stood up, he felt dizzy for a while. He swayed a bit, couldn't stand upright, and felt like he was about to fall down. A pair of strong hands supported him, and he squeezed those hands tightly, trying to see who was coming, but the scene in front of him began to be distorted, and finally it became pitch black, the hand slipped down limply, and the voice in the ear gradually drifted away. After an unknown period of time, Wang Jin's 5 senses slowly recovered, and the first thing he heard was Ger's voice. "Brother Hung, they are really too much. Jin has been bullied by them all the time. If we hadn't met you this time, Jin and I would." Ger didn't continue, his voice was still sobbing. "It's okay, Mumu, I'm here." A gentle male voice seemed to comfort Amu. Wang Jin felt that a pair of hands were holding his wrist, and after Amu finished speaking, the hand gradually tightened, until finally, it even made Wang Jin feel pain. Wang Jin moved, and tried his best to lift the upper and lower eyelids that seemed to be glued together. The first thing that came into view was the man's face. The man was directly above him, and he seemed to be lying on the man's lap. The man's expression was not good, there was a hint of blackness in his previously indifferent eyes, which made the light-colored pupils dark and hard to figure out. Wang Jin moved his wrist, opened his mouth and hummed softly, "It hurts." The man immediately came back to his senses, his knuckles shrunk slightly, he let go of Wang Jin, moved his hand behind Wang Jin, and carefully protected him. "Are you awake? Is there any discomfort?" Wang Jin moved slightly, and hissed in pain. He frowned and said aggrievedly, it hurts everywhere." There was a hint of distress in the man's eyes. Wang Jin struggled to sit up, and the man used his hands to help him sit up slowly. As soon as he sat up straight, Wang Jin looked down at his painful body, only to find that the bruises that had already faded a lot were covered with bruises, and the skin was broken in some places, and a line was drawn. The mouth of the road. Some of the openings have already been covered with herbs that Wang Jin asked men to pick. Wang Jin saw that he had so many new injuries on his body, and under the action of his heart, he felt more pain all over his body. The man looked at his brother in front of him, his beautiful and lively facial features wrinkled together in pain, his talking eyes were filled with mist at the moment, as if tears were about to drip in the next second, even the original soft and sweet voice became hoarse. His heart was aching, and a wave of anger was stuck in his chest, which was difficult to vent. The man's hands hanging on both sides tightened forcefully in a place where others could not see, so tight that the knuckles turned white. Jin, you scared us to death." Brother Mu stepped forward and hugged Wang Jin gently. Wang Jin gasped, his body hurt even if he was lightly touched. Wang Jin slightly pushed Ger away. Ger's eyes were red. Apart from being a little embarrassed, there were not many injuries on his body, and some small cuts were also medicated. Wang Jin looked around again, and found that more than a dozen orcs were looking at this side. Their eyes were curious and doubtful, and some even smiled friendlily at Wang Jin when they met Wang Jin's gaze. It's just that these people are more or less wounded, and each of them is applying some medicine dregs. Wang Jin looked around again. They were no longer in the dark hole, surrounded by astonishingly tall trees, looking straight ahead, there was no end in sight. It seems to be a jungle here. Just as Wang Jin was looking around, the man behind him suddenly pulled him into his arms. Wang Jin let out a soft cry of pain, and looked at the man accusingly. The man was stunned for a moment, and said something in a low voice to explain. "Take the medicine." Only then did Wang Jin realize that there was a pile of medicinal mud on a stone next to the man, and he was rubbing the medicinal mud on his wound with one hand. Wang Jin flinched, and stammered, "You. Take it easy." The man paused, his movements relaxed a lot. Everyone looked at him and secretly clicked their tongues, saying that this lunatic would not allow anyone to get close to him, he would go crazy if he got close to him, and would fight people desperately. Now it seems. Where is it like? This little lunatic was already pleasing to the eye, with such a cuddly appearance, everyone secretly envied Yuan Heng. Lai Yuan looked at Yuan Heng, hesitated for a moment, and walked over. This Lai Yuan was very honest and thin. Among this group of orcs, he had the most injuries on his body. At this moment, when he came to the man, he suddenly knelt down towards the man. This kneeling startled everyone. "Awan? What are you doing?" Several orcs stood up, and one of them came over, and Yuan Heng, who was holding Wang Jinteng and didn't make a move, motioned to help him. But Lai Yuan refused to get up. "Xiao Ruo, this is none of your business, don't stop me." Xiao Ruo frowned and said, "We've been brothers for many years, so if you have anything to say, just say it, you're like this, it's natural." "Awan, what's wrong with you? Don't make things difficult for Brother Heng." Brother Mu also seemed a little surprised, he reached out to help Lai Yuan, but Lai Yuan also refused. Seeing this, Yuan Heng sighed and said, "Xiao Ruo is right, you get up first, Yuan." The man's words seemed to have some kind of magical power, making people involuntarily obey them. Lai Yuan stood up, pursed his lips and said, "Brother Heng, although I am the weakest orc in the tribe, Mu is my brother and the most important person to me. Because of Mu's inconvenient legs and feet, the brothers in the tribe always run against him secretly, take care of." Lai Yuan glanced at Wang Jin, and stammered, "The leader of Jin's job is obviously assigned, but when Mu stood up for Jin Gear, the leader ignored him and let Mu and Jin Gear be bullied together. This time it was even too much to push him out of the tribe and into this dangerous area. This is Mu's life. Even though I am the weakest orc in the tribe, I don't want my brother to be killed. Such a bully." As Lai Yuan spoke, his whole body trembled, as if he was trying to bear something. Mujir heard this, looked at Lai Yuan with red eyes, reached out and gently held his hand. Fingers intertwined, Lai Yuan felt a sense of guilt. This brother Mu didn't live a single day of comfort after following him, but he was too weak, it was hard for him to stand up for his brother. Originally, the two thought that they would calm down and let it go, but this time it was different. This time they want Mu's life. Every orc knows how dangerous the giant python in the deep cave is. Usually, everyone is cautious when picking fruits in the deep cave, for fear of disturbing the giant python. Ordinary orcs couldn't bear the giant python's attack, let alone brother, but they pushed him down like this. If Cai Mumu hadn't met the returning team just now, if there weren't so many orcs in the team, and if Yuan Heng wasn't in the team, then the consequences. Lai Yuan didn't dare to imagine, and he was afraid for a while. Lai Yuan is not the only one who is afraid. Yuan Heng appeared to be much calmer on the surface, but in fact he was still in agitation until now. He almost lost the little madman. Yuan Heng's knuckles curled up, and his fingertips sank into the flesh of his palm. The pain kept him from being impulsive. He took a deep breath and said in a hoarse voice, "This matter has something to do with me too. You don't need to tell me, I won't just let it go." There was a haze between Yuan Heng's brows, the frost in his eyes made people shudder, and the terrifying scars on his face appeared even more ferocious at this moment. Lai Yuan wanted to say something else, but when he saw him like that, a chill suddenly came from the soles of his feet and went straight to the top of his head, making him dare not look up at the man, and just wanted to bow his head to him. After listening to Yuan Heng's words, all the orcs knew that something would happen when they went back this time. Some people seemed to want to persuade them, but Yuan Heng's aura was too cold, and he stopped those people. Everyone stopped talking. The man carried Wang Jin behind his back. Wang Jin exclaimed, and wrapped his arms around the man's neck. The man said coldly, "Take the prey, go back. Go back." The man paused, turned his head to look at Wang Jin who was buried in his neck, and said softly, "I will avenge you." Revenge? Hearing this word, Wang Jin's eyes lit up, and he suddenly regained his energy. His brain was running fast, and his eyes were also rolling. Thinking of the man's bravery when he fought against the giant python just now, he looked at the man's strong arms exposed. This man deserves at least 10, no, 100 nurses. The man wants to avenge him? That. You have to beat them back hard. Wang Jin demanded. Wang Jin's voice was full of anger and faintly excited, which was completely inconsistent with Cai's weak cry of pain just now. The man was stunned for a moment, chuckled, and replied, "Okay. Don't be soft-hearted." Wang Jin emphasized. The man replied, "Don't be soft-hearted. It doesn't matter if you beat him to death." Wang Jin said viciously. The man raised his eyebrows, and replied with a smile on his face, "If you beat him to death, it's mine." Ha! That's great! Wang Jin laughed, tightened his arms, buried his head on the man's neck, and got closer to the man. Listening to the conversation between the two, everyone gasped in their hearts. The little lunatic is indeed a little lunatic. As expected, he is still fierce in nature. But although the little lunatic spoke harshly, he still obediently lay on the back of the orc, such a small one, it always feels a bit cute in contrast. And the hanging calf swayed with the man's movements, swaying, shaking people's hearts. Little lunatic, it seems to be different from the rumors. Hey, stop it! Wang Jin leaned on the man's back, relaxed, and looked around. Suddenly, he saw a piece of vegetation resembling a banana leaf, and a formula flashed in his mind. His eyes lit up instantly, and his feet clamped the man's waist from behind, making it impossible for men to stride normally. The man looked down at those shining white legs, his throat was dry, and he asked in a hoarse voice, "What's wrong?" "That, I want that." Wang Jin pointed to the green banana leaves he saw. The man looked in the direction he pointed, and said helplessly, "These are just weeds." The man paused for a moment. Last time he also talked about weeds, and then this little lunatic made medicinal paste out of weeds. This time, the man walked to the banana leaf in silence, and asked, "How much do you want?" "The more the better." Wang Jin replied after pondering for a while. The man was silent for a while, picked 2 pieces, and handed them to Wang Jindao. "Pick 2 pieces for you first, and then I will pick them home alone, okay?" Wang Jin frowned, a little displeased, but the leaf was so big, it was already very difficult to get 2 of them, and it was indeed impossible to get any more. And the other people on the side behind him also took something more or less in their hands. He silently closed his mouth and swallowed his complaints. A group of people returned to the tribe in a mighty way. As soon as he returned to the tribe, Yuan Hung called out to Let Iwan and Mujir with Wang Jin on his back, and headed straight in one direction. Everyone was a little worried. Xiao Ruo watched, comforted everyone, thought for a while, turned and went in another direction. The man stopped after walking for a while. Wang Jin looked curiously. In front of them was a large room, divided into 3 directions, left, middle and right. It seemed that there were 3 families living there. Wang Jin didn't know why the man came here, he was about to ask, when he saw 3 familiar people walking out of the room. Brother Orange, Brother Qing, Brother Lan. Behind them, there is another elder brother who looks beautiful and beautiful. When the man saw Yuan Hung, his eyes showed surprise, he called out and stepped forward, "Brother Hung." As soon as he heard the voice, Wang Jin knew who it was. "Brother Yu, the number 1 beauty in the tribe who likes Yuan Hung." Wang Jin saw many beauties in his previous life, both male and female. In his opinion, this brother Yu is not very beautiful, but he is more attractive than others. He lost interest after one glance, and turned to look at the 3 of them. When the 3 came out of the room, they saw Mujir and Wang Jin's eyes were blank, and after seeing Lai Yuan and Yuan Hung, their complexions turned pale and they stopped in place. But within half a minute, their guilty conscience was covered up by their arrogance. In their cognition, How could the number one warrior of the tribe stand up for a lunatic? As for Posey, his orcs are the weakest in the tribe, and they have no fear at all. Seeing them like this, Wang Jin felt angry. He clamped the man's waist with his calf, pointed at the three men and motioned for the man, hit them, hit them. The little lunatic writhed excitedly on his back, and his petite body slid back a lot because of the movement. The man patted him helplessly, and with a little force with his fingertips, he stabilized Wang Jin sliding down. When the three of them heard this, their complexions were not good. Brother Ju cursed in a low voice, "Stinky lunatic." Brother Lang and Brother Qing also looked like they were going to fight Wang Jin, but they suppressed it secretly because of the presence of many people. The three of them seemed to have expected that Yuan Heng would not embarrass them because of this lunatic, and they looked so domineering that it made people's teeth itch. Seeing this, Yuan Heng's expression suddenly turned cold, and his light-colored eyes looking at the three of them became dark instantly, rolling out a tyrannical aura. The three of them took a step back in awe, always feeling that a catastrophe would be imminent this time. As soon as this thought came to him, Yuan Heng walked up to Lai Yuan, put Wang Jin down gently, rubbed his head, and handed it to Lai Yuan. Yuan, take care of me." "Okay." Lai Yuan replied, protecting Wang Jin and Mu Ger behind him. They have never seen such a gentle and careful appearance of a man. Even if they get along with Brother Yu, this man has never been like this. Did this man really accept living with a madman? He really wants to stand up for this lunatic? The three of them were sure about something just now, but now they are shaken. After putting down Wang Jin, the man pursed his lips and walked towards the three people. He walked very slowly, and he didn't look very fierce, but when they saw him, they still felt that he looked like a Rakshasa, who came to take his life. In a short distance, the man's steps were steady and slow, step by step clearly stepping on the ground, but it seemed as if the hearts of the three were stepped out and crushed on the ground. The three of them were extremely terrified, and wanted to escape from this place immediately, but found that their legs seemed to be nailed, unable to move an inch. Seeing the man treat Wang Jin like this, Brother Yu felt very uncomfortable. Looking at Yuan Heng's face again, he saw that he was full of anger and coldness. He unconsciously took a step forward, blocked in front of the man, and comforted him softly, "Brother Heng, don't be angry, Brother Ju is it's just a matter of saying, he didn't mean anything malicious." Fluent? It doesn't even count as poisonous mouth, just smooth mouth? There's no malicious intent yet. Brother Yu must be poisonous. Wang Jin looked at Brother Yu with twitching eyes, but noticed with sharp eyes that there was a beautiful hair ornament pinned to his head. The hair ornament was the same as the gold and silver ornaments seen on the three brothers before, and it was also from the original body. But Wang Jin has no memory of being robbed by Brother Yu. That thing on his head. Wang Jin looked past Brother Yu and looked at the three people behind him. The three of them looked at Brother Yu anxiously, as if expecting him to make the man's anger go away. Wang Jin instantly understood. It seems that the thing was given by those three people. The man was blocked by Brother Yu, and he didn't move forward for a while. The three of them glanced at each other, and they all saw a sigh of relief in each other's eyes. They sent things to Brother Yu and established a good relationship with Brother Yu. In fact, they didn't want him to stop men at first. In fact, they never thought that Yuan Heng would stand up for the lunatic. They approached Brother Yu only to prevent that one day in the future, if they mistakenly pushed Mu Ger and the lunatic into the dangerous area, he would be able to intercede with the tribal leader. It is well known that the tribal leader likes Brother Yu. However, before the matter was exposed to the leader, the two of them were not dead, and even brought their own orcs to the door. The most surprising thing is that Yuan Heng wants to stand up for this lunatic. Brother Ju came back to his senses, and quickly followed Brother Yu's words and said, yes, I was talking too much, but he is indeed a lunatic, and I was right. Brother Heng, don't mind, in fact, he is as good as you the orc, the lunatic is not good enough for you, you don't have to force yourself to cooperate with him. Without mentioning anything about what he did before, Brother Ju provoked the relationship between Wang Jin and Yuan Heng. Yuan Heng's face became even colder, but there were still some people who agreed. Brother Qing said, "Yes, if you want me to say, only Brother Yu is worthy of being the #1 warrior of the upper tribe." Lang Gear said, "That's right, this lunatic should be left to fend for himself." After hearing this, Mujir and Wang Jin could not wait to step forward and tear their mouths open, and were firmly protected by Lai Yuan behind them. Wang Jin started yelling when he couldn't make it to the front. "What are you waiting for? Hit him! Hit them! Hit me to death!" Wang Jin really used men as nurses. Brother Yu originally listened to the three people's words, but couldn't help showing a shy expression as if agreeing. Hearing Wang Jin's commanding words now, he felt that a lunatic was not good enough for Yuan Heng. He frowned in disgust and said, "You lunatic, what are you yelling about? How can you let your own orc beat someone else's brother? Brother Lita will be expelled from the tribe, do you want to kill Brother Heng?" "Ah!" Hiss. As soon as Brother Yu finished speaking, he heard a few cries of pain behind him. When he turned his head, he saw the man standing with his arms crossed at the place where the three were standing, and the three were lying on the ground crying out in mourning. "Good fight!" Wang Jin clasped his hands together, smiling brightly like the morning sun. Brother Yu froze, looked at the man with trembling lips and couldn't speak a word. "The orcs are strong, and generally don't know as much as my brother. Yuan Heng is the most gentleman among the orcs. He is also the most patient and polite to take care of my brother on weekdays, but at this time, it's really invincible for an orc to beat my brother." Yuan Heng looked at the smile of the little lunatic, and his complexion improved a lot. He leaned gently against the wall and said, "But you have bullied my brother, this little lesson is also worth it. Not too much." After finishing speaking, he stepped forward and stood in front of the three brothers, looked down at them and said, "Where are your father and brother and the orcs? Let them come out to fight." The three of them paused, forgetting to cry out in pain. This duel usually happens when two orcs compete for the same brother or when conflicts arise between orcs. If they lose, the loser will never be able to lift their heads up before the winner, and they will avoid them if they meet on the road. What's more, they will not be together for hunting in the future. This Yuan Heng was the #1 warrior in the tribe. All the orcs rushed to go hunting with Yuan Heng. With him in his charge, the safety would be much higher and the prey they would get would be much more. He is so powerful, how can his own orcs be his opponents? This is obviously to let them lose. Losing is not just a matter of lessons, it is related to future life and even survival. The three of them realized the seriousness of the matter, and they didn't dare to shout about the pain anymore. They stood up and began to make amends. "I'm sorry, Brother Heng, we were wrong, we shouldn't say that crazy." After a pause, the other one of the three men answered the question and changed his words, "You shouldn't say that about Brother Jin, it won't happen in the future, there's no need for a duel. Yeah, our father and brother and the orc just went out, and this is not at home. If you're not at home, wait for them to go home." Yuan Heng said coldly, with a firm attitude. The faces of the three were not good, and they were still thinking about how to plead for mercy. Yuan Heng blocked what they were about to say. Do you really think that I will be so unfeeling because of your few words?" Yuan Heng squinted his eyes dangerously at the three of them, and the three of them froze, what they did before flooded into their minds instantly. This man ran after them and pushed the lunatic into the dangerous area. Pushing the man into the dangerous area is tantamount to murder. If the man really agrees that the lunatic is his brother, then making this decision is considered kind. The complexions of several people were pale, their upper and lower lips trembled, and now they were unable to speak a word even though they were usually eloquent. Brother Yu was stunned. He never thought that Yuan Heng would do this for this lunatic. Just at this time, three people came back carrying a pile of meat. These three orcs were brothers, and they were also the orcs of the three elder brothers. They married their elder brothers together at the beginning, and they built a house together when they married. In a courtyard, their relationship with Yuan Heng is average. They belong to the kind of tribal neighbors who don't usually visit each other, but will help each other at critical moments. At this moment, they were a little surprised to see Yuan Heng, but Yuan Heng was the #1 warrior in the tribe, so they still welcomed him very much. They greeted Yuan Heng friendly, but Lai Yuan was ignored by them. One of them approached Yuan Heng enthusiastically and said, "Brother Heng, why are you here? You are so good that you even hunted the giant python in the deep cave. We have never eaten the meat of a giant python. Thanks to Brother Heng this time, I'm lucky." The orc patted the snake on his shoulder, and Wang Jin saw that the group of orcs following Yuan Heng carried it back from the jungle. Originally, he didn't know what it was, but now he realized that it was the orcs who broke down the giant python into countless pieces of meat and brought it back. When the orc tribe came back from hunting big prey, the whole tribe shared the food together. One was to support the old, weak, sick, and disabled in the tribe, and the other was to increase the feelings of the tribe. Originally it was nothing, but today the snake meat. For a moment, the atmosphere was awkward and weird. The three brothers froze at the door, taking a sudden breath in their hearts. The giant python in the deep cave. Orcs generally don't take the initiative to hunt the giant python, because the snake is too huge and dangerous. But this time the hunting team brought by Yuan Heng came back, and when he came back, he brought Madman and Pose to find them. Before that, they pushed Madman and Pose into a deep hole. As soon as several things were connected, the three of them understood why the lunatic and Brother Mew were still alive, and how they were rescued. They were pale and unsteady standing, only feeling that this time it was really over. Yuan Heng looked meaningfully at the three people who came to pay attention, and said with a sneer, "You shouldn't trust me, but you should trust the blessings of the three elder brothers in your family." Several people looked at each other, some didn't understand what Yuan Heng said, but Yuan Heng didn't have the patience to explain, and directly said seriously to those people, "Let's fight, you can ask your brother about the reason for the duel later." The few people were taken aback, their smiles froze on their faces, and they hurriedly piled the snake meat on the ground, a little at a loss. This is a duel with the first warrior of the tribe, and he will lose. What was it that made this person come here to fight them on purpose? Did this person take a fancy to their brother? But in the orc tribe, an orc is only allowed to have one brother, and the atmosphere in front of him is not like that. So what is it that makes this person so disregarding face? This made it clear that we wanted to draw a clear line with them, and we would no longer communicate with them in the future.